He was kicked out of his son's house on his birthday. "Get out of my house now," he shouted at his father. But what happened next left them in shock. It was Simon's 60th birthday, a day that for him had great meaning. He woke up feeling nostalgic, remembering so many moments in life that he celebrated with his wife and son. The house was quiet. He thought that maybe when he went downstairs for breakfast, his daughter-in-law Maya and his son Leon would surprise him with a cake, or at least a happy birthday. But when he reached the kitchen, the reality was different. Maya was busy feeding Sophie, their daughter, and Leon seemed engrossed in his phone, not paying much attention to what was going on in the house. Simon stood there for a while, hoping that someone would notice. The silence was heavy. He took a deep breath and decided to say something. "Good morning, everyone," he said, trying to hide his sadness with a small smile. "Good morning," Maya quickly replied, without even looking at him, focused on feeding Sophie a spoonful of food. Leon mumbled something like "hi" without taking his eyes off the screen, and that was it. Simon felt a pang in his chest. No congratulations, no sign of affection. He stood there for a few more seconds, waiting for maybe a small gesture, but nothing happened. He sat at the table, picked up his cup of coffee, and began to drink in silence. The usual noises of the day continued, while inside he felt completely invisible. Later that same day, Simon was walking around the house, trying to push aside the fact that his birthday had been completely forgotten. He was on his way to the bedroom when he heard low voices coming from the room next door. Curious, he stopped staying quiet and realized it was Maya talking to Leon. He didn't want to eavesdrop, but Maya's words caught his attention. "I can't believe he still expects something, Leon," said Maya, sounding tired. "I barely have time for Sophie and the baby on the way, let alone worrying about his birthday, for goodness sake." Simon stood completely still, hearing every word, even though his heart wanted to stop right there. "But Maya, it's my dad's 60th birthday," Leon replied, his voice a bit unsure. "So what?" Maya cut in, impatient. "We've got bigger concerns right now. He already lives here, eats for free, has everything he needs. I don't think he has the right to feel abandoned just because we're not throwing him a party." Simon took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that wanted to come. He felt a lump in his throat and a deep sadness creeping over him. Every word from Maya felt like a knife. He had never felt so disposable, so ignored. Simon went back to the bedroom, trying to hold in the pain he was feeling. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at a photo of his wife, who had passed away a few years ago. Since she had gone, he moved into his son's house, thinking he could be part of that new family, help out and be present like he always had been. But now, after everything he had heard, things felt different. He sat there in silence, thinking about how much life had changed. Before, he was the center of everything. He and his wife were the foundation of the family. But after she passed, he started to feel like things were slowly falling apart. At first, Leon and Maya seemed grateful to have him there, helping around the house and taking care of little Sophie. But over time, the feeling of being a burden had grown. And now, after overhearing that conversation, he was certain of it. With tears in his eyes, Simon thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I am a burden. They have their own lives now. A new baby is on the way, and I'm just here. I'm not needed anymore. A few hours later, Simon had made up his mind to have an honest conversation with Leon and Maya. He didn't want to keep living with the feeling of being a burden, so he called them to talk in the living room. "Leon, Maya, I need to talk to you," Simon said, his voice quiet but firm. They both glanced at each other and sat down on the sofa, waiting to hear what Simon had to say. "I know you have your own lives, Sophie, the baby on the way, and your work," Simon began, taking a deep breath. "And I also know that, since your mother passed, things have changed. I thought I was helping by staying here, but I realize now that I've been getting in the way." Leon frowned, confused, while Maya looked at the floor, visibly uncomfortable. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Leon asked, trying to understand. "I heard your conversation," Simon said, his heart tightening just thinking about it. "I know you think my birthday doesn't matter, and that I'm just another worry in your lives. It made me think a lot. I think it's better if I go somewhere where I won't be in the way anymore. A care home might be the best place for me now. The silence that followed was heavy. Leon looked at Maya, unsure of what to say, while she remained quiet. "Dad, you don't have to do that," Leon finally said, his voice uncertain. "You don't need to go to a care home." Simon slowly shook his head, feeling a weariness that wasn't just physical. "Leon, I don't want to be a burden. I've lived long enough and you have your own family now. I need to do what's best for me too." He stood up, ready to leave the room, but deep down he hoped that Leon or Maya would say something to change his mind. But all he heard was silence. And in that moment, Simon knew his decision was made. Simon was still standing, waiting for a word of comfort, an apology, anything to make him feel like he still had a place in that house. But instead, he saw Leon stand up abruptly, his face hardened with frustration. "You know what, Dad?" Leon began, his voice full of impatience. "If you think it's all so bad, if you think you're being a burden, then leave, get out now, go and enjoy the streets." Simon froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. His eyes filled with instant tears, but he held them back. Leon kept staring at him, arms crossed as if waiting for some reaction, something Simon never thought would come from his own son. "Leon, Simon tried to speak, but Leon cut him off. "I'm tired, Dad. Tired of all this. I have my own family to take care of, my work, my daughter. I can't keep worrying about you all the time." Simon looked at Maya, hoping she would say something, anything, but she remained silent, looking away, as if she didn't want to be part of the conversation. "So that's it," Simon said, his voice trembling. "You want me to leave?" "You're the one who said you want to go. So go," Leon replied coldly. Without saying anything else, Simon turned and walked out of the room, heartbroken. At that moment, he realized that his son had chosen to distance himself from him for good. Simon left the house with a broken heart, without looking back. He didn't know exactly where to go, but one thing was certain: he couldn't stay there any longer. The weight of Leon's words still echoed in his mind. Every step he took felt harder, as if he was carrying all the pain of the last few years on his shoulders. After walking for a while, he remembered Adrian, his old friend. Adrian was a lonely man who always welcomed him with open arms. With no other option, Simon decided to go to his house. When he reached the door, he was still sad, unsure of what he would say. He knocked gently, and soon Adrian appeared. His eyes lit up when he saw Simon, but he quickly realized something was wrong. "Simon, what happened, my friend?" Adrian asked, worried, seeing the state his old friend was in. I don't have anywhere to stay, Adrian," Simon replied, his voice low, trying to hold back the tears. "I was kicked out of my son's house." Adrian was shocked but didn't ask anything more. He just put his hand on Simon's shoulder and pulled him inside, like someone bringing a brother home. "You don't need to say anything more, Simon. You're welcome here for as long as you need," Adrian said with a sincere smile. "I've always wanted company, you know that. This house has plenty of space." Simon felt his heart warm a little. There in Adrian's house, he was welcomed with the kindness he so desperately needed. There was no luxury, no grand gestures, but just having a place where he felt cared for was more than he expected at that moment. Adrian made some hot tea and sat down next to Simon. "Here you'll find peace, my friend. You don't need to worry about anything now," Adrian said, handing him a cup. Simon looked at him and, for the first time that day, let the tears fall. But this time, they weren't just from sadness, but also from relief at having someone who still cared. In the days following Simon's departure, Leon started to feel guilty about what he had done. The image of his father leaving the house, with that look of sadness and disappointment, stayed in his mind. He tried to move on, but the guilt seemed to grow each day. One night, while sitting on the sofa, Leon looked at Maya, who was taking care of Sophie. He sighed, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "I can't stop thinking about my dad," he said, breaking the silence. "Maybe I went too far. I kicked him out of the house on his birthday, Maya. That's not right." Maya, without taking her eyes off Sophie, replied directly, "Leon, you did what needed to be done. We have a lot of important things to take care of now. Sophie needs us, and the baby is coming soon." Your dad is an adult. He knows how to take care of himself. But he's my dad, Leon replied, his voice filled with doubt. He was always there for me and I just sent him away. How could I do that? Maya sighed, seeming impatient. Look, Leon, I understand that you feel bad, but we don't have time for this right now. You need to focus on the business, on the company. We're going through a tough phase, and I need you to be 100% focused. Besides, your daughter needs you. Your dad will be fine. He's lived his life. Now take care of yours. Leon remained silent, feeling the weight of Maya's words. He knew the business was demanding a lot from him, and the pressure of being a good father to Sophie was also great. But deep down, the guilt over what he had done to Simon kept tormenting him. Maya wanted him to move on, but his heart couldn't let go of it so easily. Matteo, Adrian's son, was a private detective with a sharp instinct when something wasn't right with Simon. He often visited his father's house to check on the two old men who now lived there together. Simon didn't talk much about what had happened, but Matteo knew there was something strange about the way he had been kicked out of his son's house. One day, while investigating some cases, Matteo heard rumors that Maya, Leon's wife, had been meeting with a man who wasn't her husband. At first, Matteo was doubtful, but as a detective, his curiosity got the better of him. He decided to dig deeper without telling Simon or Adrian. After a few days of following Maya's movements, Matteo saw her entering a discreet cafe, accompanied by Jack, an old friend of Leon's. Their behavior was strange, far too close for just friends. Keeping his distance, Matteo observed every move, and what he saw left no doubt. Maya and Jack were involved in something much more than just friendship. He continued his investigation, and during one of his recordings he caught a revealing conversation. Maya, speaking in a low voice, said to Jack, "He's never going to know that the baby is yours." Matteo was shocked to hear that. The baby that Leon was so eagerly expecting wasn't his, but Jack's, his own friend. Maya's betrayal was deeper than he had imagined, and the secret she was hiding could completely destroy Leon's life. Matteo didn't stop at discovering the truth about the pregnancy. Something still bothered him. He felt there was more to the story than just a personal betrayal. Determined to dig deeper, he started investigating the company and the people around Maya. That's when the name Jason, a business partner of Leon and close friend, kept coming up. Using his detective skills, Matteo managed to access company documents and contracts. What he found made everything even clearer. There was fraud happening right under Leon's nose. Jason, together with Maya, was embezzling large sums of money from the company. They were using overpriced contracts with Jason's company as a way to siphon millions from Leon's business without him noticing. Matteo was stunned at how carefully everything was done. Jason and Maya had planned everything down to the last detail, taking advantage of the fact that Leon trusted them completely. Leon was so busy with work and his family that he didn't even suspect the scam. Maya pretended to be on her husband's side, but behind his back, she was helping Jason take as much as possible. In a conversation that Matteo managed to record, Maya and Jason discussed their plans. "We need to speed this up, Jason. The faster we move the money, the sooner we can disappear," said Maya, her tone cold and calculating. "I'm already taking care of it. Leon has no idea." "By the time he realizes, we'll be long gone," Jason replied with a cynical laugh. Matteo knew time was running out. The fraud was huge, and if no one acted, Leon would lose everything he had built. It was time to take action, and more than ever, he needed to tell Simon and Leon the truth before it was too late. Simon was sitting in Adrian's small living room when Matteo arrived with a serious expression. Simon knew the detective had been investigating a few things, but he had no idea what he was about to hear. Matteo explained everything: Maya's suspicious meetings with Jack, the pregnancy, and worst of all, the fraud she and Jason were carrying out to steal Leon's company. The shock was overwhelming. Simon stayed silent for a moment, taking it all in. His heart ached, not only for the betrayal Leon was suffering, but also because his son was blind to it all. Even after being kicked out of the house, Simon still cared about Leon, and knowing that Maya was destroying his life filled him with deep anguish. "Matteo, I have to warn Leon," Simon said after a while, standing up from the chair. Matteo looked at him, concerned. "Are you sure? After everything he did to you?" "He's my son, Matteo. I can't just sit here, knowing he's being deceived like this. It doesn't matter what happened between us. I'm still his father." Matteo understood Simon's pain, but he knew the warning needed to be given as soon as possible. Simon took a deep breath, trying to gather his courage, and asked Adrian to drive him to Leon's house. On the way, he thought about Leon's last words when he kicked him out. Even so, he couldn't ignore what he knew. His relationship with his son might be broken, but Leon needed to be warned. Arriving at the door, Simon hesitated but rang the bell. Leon opened the door with a surprised expression, and for a moment he seemed unsure of what to say. "Dad? What are you doing here?" Simon looked into his son's eyes, feeling the weight of everything he was about to reveal. "Leon, I've come to warn you. You need to be careful with Maya and Jason. They're deceiving you in several ways involving money and more personal matters between them. I know you might not want to hear this from me, but I'm here because I care about you. You need to open your eyes and be alert." Leon stood there frozen, with Simon's words echoing in his head. He wanted to believe that his father was wrong, that this was all just a misunderstanding, but there was something in Simon's voice, something sincere that made him stop and think. After Simon left, Leon closed the door slowly, feeling a heaviness in his chest. He sat down on the sofa, staring into space, and began to recall certain situations. Little things that didn't make sense before now seemed to fit together. Maya was always busy, always had excuses for being out of the house. Jason showed up at the company with ideas and proposals that at the time seemed good, but now felt suspicious. Leon ran his hand over his face, trying to process everything. Could my dad be right? Could Maya and Jason really be deceiving me? He didn't want to believe that the woman he had shared so many years with could be behind something so cruel. But doubt began to grow. In the following days, he started to watch more closely. He noticed how Maya got uncomfortable when he asked questions about the business. She quickly changed the subject, always offering an excuse about the pregnancy or saying that he needed to focus on the company. Jason, on the other hand, kept acting like they were great friends, but now Leon saw it differently. The conversations about new contracts always seemed slightly forced, as if Jason was trying to convince him of something. One night, Maya was in the kitchen when Leon decided to confront her, calmly but directly. "Maya, we need to talk about the company, about Jason." She stopped what she was doing and looked at him with a surprised expression. "What about Jason?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I've been feeling like something's not right. Have you noticed anything?" Maya let out a short laugh, but there was a nervous tone to it. "Leon, seriously? You're doubting your best friend. Jason's only trying to help you grow the company, like he's always done." But Leon felt that something was wrong. For the first time, he began to realize that maybe it wasn't his father who had been trying to manipulate him, but rather the people closest to him. Maya and Jason were getting nervous. They had noticed that something wasn't right. Leon was more alert, asking questions he never would have before, and Maya knew that Matteo, Adrian's son, was investigating things that shouldn't be discovered. The situation was slipping out of their control. "We need to speed this up, Jason," said Maya, pacing back and forth in Jason's office. "Leon's getting suspicious. If he finds out everything before we move the money, we're finished." Jason, sitting behind his desk, was visibly worried. He drummed his fingers on the table, thinking quickly. "I agree, we can't wait any longer. We've already moved a good amount, but we need to get the rest before he does something. Do you think that guy, Matteo, already knows everything?" "I'm not sure, but he's close to figuring it out, and if Leon connects the dots, it's over," Maya replied, her expression serious. "We need to figure out how to get the money and disappear as soon as possible." Jason took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. They had planned everything carefully, but now time was against them. "We'll find a way to transfer the rest today, and tomorrow we'll catch the next flight out of the country," Jason said, determined. "I've already got everything prepared. We just need Leon to not do anything suspicious until then and sign a few papers." "And what about Simon?" Maya asked, crossing her arms. He'll try to warn Leon again, I know it. And what if he knows more? Don't worry about Simon right now, Jason replied with a hard look. The focus is on finishing what we started. If it works, we'll never have to worry about any of them again. Maya nodded, though inside she felt a slight fear that something could go wrong. She knew the plan was becoming risky, but for her, there was no turning back. Now it was about escaping before everything collapsed. With their decision made, Jason quickly started transferring the money, while Maya worked on covering their tracks. The clock was ticking, and they knew that any slip-up now could cost them everything. Leon was in his office alone, staring at the documents on his desk. Since the conversation with Simon, he hadn't been able to sleep properly. Doubts were growing every day. On one side, he had his father's voice echoing in his head, warning him about Maya and Jason's betrayal. On the other, there were the years of trust he had placed in his wife and friend. He wanted to believe this was all just a big misunderstanding, but the evidence was starting to pile up. He ran his hands over his face, exhausted. His mind was torn. Maya had always been by his side, or at least that's what he thought. And Jason, his business partner and longtime friend, had never shown any signs that something was wrong. But what if Simon was right? What if they were really plotting behind his back? This can't be, he muttered to himself, trying to push the possibility away. That night, after Sophie had been put to bed, Leon felt he needed to talk to Maya again. He walked into the bedroom and found her lying on the bed looking at her phone. He sat on the edge of the bed and for a moment was silent, thinking about the right words to say. "Maya," he began, his voice low. "I can't ignore what my dad told me. I need to know the truth. Are you and Jason hiding something from me?" Maya looked up and her expression turned serious. She put her phone down and sat up, looking directly at him. "Leon, how many times do I have to tell you this is madness? Your dad just wants to cause trouble between us. He's bitter. He wants to drive you away from me. I love you, and Jason is only trying to help with the business. Nothing more." Maya's words were firm, but there was something different in her voice. Leon felt a slight unease, a discomfort, but even so he wanted to believe her. She was his wife, the mother of his child, and he had trusted her for so long. Could it really be possible that this was all just confusion caused by his father? "I want to believe you, Maya," Leon said with a heavy sigh, "but things don't add up. I feel like something's wrong." Maya looked at him for a moment and in a softer tone replied, "Leon, you know I'd never do anything to hurt you. You need to trust me, now, more than ever. We have a family. We need to take care of our daughter and the baby that's on the way. Forget these stories from your dad. He doesn't know what he's saying." Leon stayed silent, torn between wanting to trust Maya and the fear that Simon was right. He knew that, one way or another, the truth would soon come out. And all he could do was hope it wouldn't be too late. Maya and Jason were getting more nervous by the day. They knew Leon was suspicious, and Simon seemed to be getting closer to exposing the truth. It was only a matter of time before everything came to light. Sitting in Jason's office, away from anyone who could overhear, they discussed their next move. "Simon's the biggest problem right now," Jason said, crossing his arms with a serious look. "If he keeps stirring things up, he'll ruin us. We need to do something to shut him up before he goes to the police or convinces Leon for good." Maya was tense, pacing back and forth with a worried expression. She knew Simon was a threat. He had already warned Leon, and if Leon believed his father, their whole plan would collapse. Plus there was Mateo, who was already investigating and could connect the dots at any moment. "You're right, Jason," Maya said, stopping and looking at her friend. "We don't have a choice. Simon needs to be silenced once and for all. But how do we do that without raising suspicion?" Jason thought for a moment, calculating their options. "We need to get him out of the way quietly. Nothing too drastic. Just enough to make him disappear for a while. We can lure him somewhere remote and make sure he's stuck there until we finish what we started and run off with the money. Once we're gone, he can say whatever he wants. It won't matter." Maya bit her lip, thinking. The plan was risky, but it seemed like the only way to ensure nothing stood in the way of their escape. "How will we lure him?" she asked, trying to imagine how Simon would fall for the trap. Jason gave a cold smile. We'll use Leon. We'll send a fake message pretending to be Leon, asking to meet him at some isolated place. Simon will show up thinking his son wants to talk, and then we'll lock him up there until everything's sorted. Maya took a deep breath, her heart racing. She knew this was going too far, but there was no turning back now. They were about to flee with millions, and Simon was the only thing standing between them and freedom. "All right, let's do it," she said, determined. "We'll make sure Simon stays out of the way." Simon was at home with Adrian when his phone beeped. He looked at the screen and saw a message from Leon. "Dad, we need to talk. Meet me at the old warehouse on the dock road. It's urgent." Simon's heart started beating faster. Finally, Leon wanted to talk, maybe to sort things out. Without a second thought, he stood up, a slight smile of hope on his face, and said to Adrian, "Leon sent me a message. He wants to meet me. I think things might finally get resolved." Adrian looked at Simon, a bit concerned. "Are you sure that's a good idea? The place sounds a bit strange. An old warehouse." "He probably wants a quiet place for us to talk," Simon replied, trying to stay optimistic. "I have to go." Adrian didn't push further, but something in the back of his mind told him Simon should be careful. When Simon arrived at the warehouse, the place was deserted and silent. He looked around, surprised that Leon wasn't there. The old building seemed abandoned, with dirty walls and broken windows. The wind made a strange sound as it passed through the gaps in the walls. "Leon?" Simon called out, stepping slowly into the warehouse. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned around, instead of seeing Leon, there stood Maya and Jason, both with cold expressions. "What's going on? Where's Leon?" Simon asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. Something was terribly wrong. Maya gave a fake smile. "Leon's not coming, Simon. We sent the message," she said, crossing her arms. "You've meddled too much where you shouldn't have." Jason, standing next to her, took a step forward. "You're getting in the way of our plans, Simon. And we can't let that happen." Simon stepped back, trying to make sense of what was happening. He looked at Maya in disbelief. "Maya, you and Jason, what are you trying to do?" "All we want is to take the money and get out of here, and you're in the way," Jason said bluntly. "Now we're going to make sure you stay quiet until we're done." Before Simon could react, Jason and Maya moved toward him, trying to grab him. Simon tried to resist, but he wasn't as strong as he used to be. Jason managed to push him into a back room in the warehouse, locking the door quickly. "Stay here until we finish what we need to do," Jason said coldly as Simon banged on the door, desperate to get out. "You won't get away with this. Leon will find out the truth," Simon shouted, trying to hold back the tears. He couldn't believe his own son was being deceived like this. On the other side of the door, Maya and Jason hurried out, ready to finish their scheme. While Simon was trapped in the warehouse, banging on the door and trying to get out, Adrian began to worry at home. Something in his heart told him that something was wrong. He tried calling Simon, but the phone just rang without an answer. That's when he decided to call Matteo and explain the situation. "Matteo, Simon went to meet Leon at an old warehouse by the docks, but something doesn't feel right. He's not answering me, and I have a bad feeling." Matteo, who was already suspicious of Maya and Jason, felt this could be a trap. Without wasting time, he contacted the police and asked them to help find Simon. They knew that every minute counted. Arriving at the warehouse with police sirens in the background, Matteo and Adrian ran ahead with a team of officers following closely behind. Matteo forced open the main door and headed straight to the back of the warehouse, following the muffled sounds of Simon banging and shouting for help. "Simon!" Matteo shouted as he ran towards the locked door. When he finally opened the door, he found Simon visibly shaken, but relieved to see Adrian's son and the police. "Thank God you're here," Simon said, out of breath, as Matteo and Adrian helped him out of the room. "We knew something was wrong," Adrian said, placing a hand on Simon's shoulder. "We weren't going to leave you alone." Meanwhile, Maya and Jason were just about to flee. They heard the sirens and the sound of footsteps approaching, but it was already too late. The police quickly surrounded the area. Jason tried to run, but he was tackled within seconds. Maya, desperate, tried to argue with the officers, saying it was all a misunderstanding, but no one listened. "Maya and Jason, you're under arrest for fraud and attempted kidnapping," said one of the officers as they handcuffed the two. Maya shot a hateful look at Simon, who watched from a distance, but there was nothing more she could do. Their plan was ruined. Matteo, standing beside Simon, smiled in relief. "Justice has been served. You're safe now." Simon, still shaken, took a deep breath and looked at Matteo and Adrian. "Thank you. You saved my life," he said, his eyes filling with tears, knowing that despite all the pain, there were still people who cared about him. Leon was in his office when he got the news of Maya and Jason's arrest. The truth finally hit him. Everything his father had told him was true. The betrayal wasn't just in his marriage, but also in the business, involving millions, and the trust he had always placed in Maya and Jason. He was in shock, his hands trembling as he held the phone. He felt a tightness in his chest, as if everything around him was collapsing. The weight of guilt hit him like a wave. He had treated Simon horribly, kicked him out of the house, ignored his warnings, and now the truth was right in front of him, raw and painful. Worst of all was the feeling that he had lost everything. But most of all, he had deeply hurt the man who had always been there for him. Without thinking twice, Leon got into his car and drove straight to Adrian's house. The whole way, he thought about how to apologize to his father, how he could make things right. When he arrived at the door, he was nervous, afraid that Simon wouldn't want him around anymore, but he had to try. Adrian answered the door, and seeing Leon, he knew the son had come seeking forgiveness. "He's in the living room, Leon. I think you two need to talk," Adrian said calmly, stepping aside to let Leon in. Leon entered slowly, and when he saw Simon sitting on the sofa, reading in silence, his heart sank even more. Simon looked up at the sound of footsteps and was surprised to see his son standing there. "Dad," Leon began, his voice low and full of regret. I don't even know where to start. I've been an idiot, and now I see how right you were. Maya and Jason, they were betraying me all along. I trusted them and I ignored you. I'm so sorry, Dad, really." Simon stayed silent for a moment, letting Leon speak. He saw the sincerity in his son's eyes, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Though his heart was still hurt, Simon sighed, but there was no more anger in him. "Leon," Simon said softly but firmly, "I tried to warn you because I care about you. I never wanted anything but the best for you, even when you treated me the way you did. I'm your father and I love you, but the pain you caused me, it was deep." Leon lowered his head, ashamed, with tears welling up in his eyes. "I know, Dad. I know I messed up badly, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm here because I want to fix things. If you give me a chance, I want to be a better son to you." Simon looked at his son for a while, then stood up. He placed a hand on Leon's shoulder and, with a look of understanding, said, "What's done is done, Leon. What matters is that you're here now and you're willing to change. We can fix this together. I forgive you, son." Leon couldn't hold back his tears and hugged his father tightly as if trying to make up for all the lost time. "Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down again." While being taken to the police station, Maya, in complete desperation, began to think of one last plan to escape. She knew that if she was arrested, her entire scheme would collapse for good. She looked out of the police car window, her heart racing, trying to find a way out. Then, an idea came to her mind. A bluff. The most desperate one. "Wait!" Maya shouted to the officers in the front seat. "Please stop the car. I think my baby is coming. She's premature." The officers exchanged surprised looks. One of them, concerned, turned to her. "What did you say?" "The baby. She's coming now," Maya said, placing her hands on her stomach, pretending to be in pain. "Please take me to the hospital. I need help." The officer in the passenger seat looked at the driver. There was a protocol for emergencies like this, and if what Maya said was true, they would have to take her to the hospital immediately. "If this is true, we need to get her to the nearest emergency room," the driver said, already considering changing course. Maya, realizing that her plan was working, intensified her acting. "I swear, the baby is coming. Too fast. There's no time." But as the officers debated the situation, A second police car arrived. Matteo, who had been closely following the case, had warned the officers that Maya might try something to escape. "Hold on," said one of the new officers arriving at the scene. "This woman is a fraud. Don't fall for her trick." The officer with Maya hesitated, looking at her more closely. Her desperation seemed forced, and with the new patrol car by their side, it became clear that Maya was trying to deceive them. Her last-minute bluff had been uncovered. "Maya, calm down," the officer said firmly. "We'll check this at the hospital, but if you're lying, you're only making things worse for yourself." Maya realized her plan was falling apart, and knowing there was no way out, she started to cry, still pretending to be in pain. "Please, just let me go. I just want to get away from this mess." But there was nothing more she could do. The police didn't fall for her trick, and she was taken straight to the station, where she would be processed for all her crimes. Maya's final desperate attempt had failed, and now, with no more escape, she would have to face the consequences of her actions. After all the chaos, the pain caused by Maya and Jason was still fresh, but there was something stronger in that moment, the desire to start over. Despite everything they had lost, they still had each other, and that was the most important thing. Leon, filled with regret, looked at his father as they walked together through the company, which was now in disarray. Papers were scattered everywhere, contracts were pending. It all looked like a giant puzzle that would need to be pieced back together from scratch. "Dad, I don't even know where to begin," Leon said, sighing as he ran his hand through his hair. "Maya and Jason left everything in ruins. The company is almost bankrupt. I was so blind." Simon stopped and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Leon, there's no point in dwelling on what happened. What matters is what we do from now on. We'll rebuild this together. It won't be easy, but with hard work and honesty, we can do it. I believe in you." Leon looked at his father with gratitude. After everything he had put Simon through, there he was, offering unconditional support. It touched Leon deeply. "Thank you, Dad. I'm going to do things the right way now. I don't want to lose my way again. You've always been by my side, and I failed to see that." Simon smiled, a calm and affectionate smile. "What matters is that you're here now, Leon. We've got a second chance, and that's more than many people get. Let's make this work, together. And besides, your daughter Sophie needs a secure future. We'll build that for her too." Leon nodded, determined. He knew this would be a tough journey, but with his father by his side, he felt it was possible. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace, knowing that despite the losses, he and Simon had something that neither money nor Maya and Jason's betrayals could destroy: the love between father and son. With a firm handshake, father and son returned to work, ready to face the challenges and rebuild not only the company, but also the bond that united them. Now, with truth and trust restored, they were stronger than ever. With Maya and Jason in prison, Leon knew that the responsibility of rebuilding his life and the company now rested entirely on his shoulders. He was determined to do things the right way, even if it meant facing the consequences of the mistakes that had been made under his name. Leon and Simon were in the office, looking at documents that showed the full extent of Maya and Jason's fraud. Leon sighed, looking at his father. "This is going to be tough, Dad. The company is drowning in debt because of the fraud. I need to clean up this mess and deal with the fake contracts, but I'll do whatever it takes. I want the company to become what it used to be, a place of respect, built on honesty." Simon, always calm and steady, looked at his son with pride. "I know you'll manage, Leon. You have the strength for this. What's important now is to face the problems head-on and be transparent. People will understand that you were deceived, but you have to be ready to face the consequences and fix each mistake, one by one." Leon nodded, determined. "I'll do that, Dad. I'll take responsibility, apologize to the clients and partners, and make sure the company regains its reputation. No matter how long it takes, I'm going to restore our family's name." Beyond the company, Leon had another big challenge: ensuring that Sophie had a safe and loving home. With Maya in prison, he knew he had to fight for full custody of his daughter so that she wouldn't be further affected by all the confusion. He spent days gathering documents, proving he was the best caregiver for Sophie. One day, after a long court hearing, Leon returned home with Simon and Sophie feeling relieved and emotional. "I did it, Dad," Leon said, holding Sophie in his arms. "The judge granted me full custody. Sophie's going to stay with me." Simon smiled, seeing the joy in his son's eyes. "You did what needed to be done, Leon. Now your daughter has you to take care of her, and that's what matters most. She'll grow up knowing she has a father who will always be there for her." Leon looked at Sophie, who was innocently playing, unaware of the storm that had passed around her. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but he was determined to be the best father he could be and to build a secure future for her. "I won't let her down, Dad," Leon said firmly. "I'm going to raise Sophie with all the love and care she deserves, and I'll rebuild our company so she can have a future she can be proud of." Simon placed his hand on Leon's shoulder, looking at him with pride and affection. "You're already doing that, son. Together we'll get through everything, and I'll help you every step of the way, for as long as I live." Now, with Sophie by his side and his father's support, Leon felt that despite the challenges, he was on the right path. He had learned from his mistakes and was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that love and truth would always prevail. As time passed, Leon and Simon realized that despite all the betrayals and lies they had faced, the bond between father and son had grown stronger. The pain caused by Maya and Jason had left scars, but it had also brought an important lesson. The love they had for each other was unshakable, stronger than any problem. Leon worked hard to rebuild the company, but this time with Simon's full support by his side. They did everything together, discussing every detail and making decisions based on the honesty and trust they had regained. The company, which had been sinking, slowly began to recover. Old clients returned, and new business opportunities arose. Leon knew that with patience and dedication, everything would fall into place. At home, Sophie's presence brought joy to even the toughest days. She was full of energy and always managed to make both her father and grandfather smile. Simon, who had already raised Leon, now helped take care of his granddaughter, and the house came alive again. Sophie's laughter filled the air, reminding Leon and Simon of what really mattered. One sunny afternoon, the three of them were in the garden. Simon watched as Sophie played with Leon, who chased her around, pretending to be a monster just to make her laugh. The sound of her giggles mixed with the sincere smile on Leon's face filled Simon with happiness. Leon stopped for a moment, out of breath but with a wide grin on his face. He walked over to Simon and sat down next to him. "Hello, Dad. If someone had asked me a few months ago where we'd be today, I never would have imagined this," Leon said, gratitude in his voice. "I thought I'd lost everything, even you. But now, I feel like I've gained so much more." Simon looked at his son with a serene smile. "Life isn't always easy, Leon. We make mistakes, we get lost. But what's important is finding our way back. And you did that. What matters is that we're together, and the truth has won out. Nothing else can bring us down." Leon lowered his head for a moment, touched. "I'll never forget what you did for me, Dad. Even when I treated you unfairly, you were there. I've learned so much from this. And now, with Sophie here, I know I'll do everything I can to be as good a father as you've been to me." Simon smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "You're already a great father, Leon. Sophie's lucky to have you, and I'm lucky to have both of you." They sat there in silence for a while, watching Sophie play in the garden, feeling the peace of the moment. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where the love they shared, strengthened by their hardships, was stronger than any scars from the past. The betrayal and pain were fading into the past. What remained now was a new story, built on trust, respect, and above all, the unconditional love between father and son. A new chapter in their lives, where nothing else mattered but being together, ready for whatever challenges the future might bring. This story has shown us how life can be full of surprises and betrayals, but in the end, what really matters are the true bonds we build with the people we love. Leon learned that his father Simon's love and trust were far more valuable than anything else. Even in the face of pain and lies, the unconditional love between them was able to overcome it all. We saw how mistakes can be forgiven and how it's possible to start over. as long as there's sincerity and a willingness to change. And what about you? What have you learned from this story? Have you ever had to forgive or rebuild something with someone important in your life? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget, if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss other moving stories. Click on the video that's appearing on the screen now to continue following our journey. See you next time.